Here we are for the tour of Newport News Criterium 35 and 45 plus Masters race. For this Omnium stage race, my goal was to win the overall GC. Friday night, there were some street sprints. Earlier this morning was a time trial. This is the Criterium. And the following day was the circuit race. So I knew I had a good chance of achieving that goal of the overall win coming into the race. But on the street sprints on Friday night, the officials made a mistake. Instead of putting me in the final heat that was racing for 1st through 4th, they put me in the final heat that was racing for 5th through 9th. So I lost out on points, and eventually after this race, I was given 4th place points, which was more than I had gotten, obviously. But at this point, it hadn't been figured out yet. But it didn't even really matter ultimately over the whole weekend and even up to this point, because earlier in the day I won the time trial. Barely. I had a mechanical and made it to the start 15 seconds before my start, so I almost missed the finish. But I got there. I got 1st place. So I kind of came into this race already feeling kind of on the back foot because of Friday night, losing out on points because of just a mistake. And then I felt like the time trial, I could have done so much better. I got lucky to get 1st. I got lucky to make it to the start in time. So I kind of came into this race like with two things in my mind, like, oh boy, I'm on the back foot already. Kind of set the tone for the weekend. And my favorite event, the time trial, just didn't go smoothly. So I was just raring to go here. If I was going to be more conservative, going into the weekend in this race, that went out the door right away on Friday night, and especially in the morning. So I was coming into this kind of ready to go and to put an effort in and take a little bit of a risk. I wore my Larry Bird socks. They got the numbers 3-3 kind of on my lower calf. Larry Bird, number 33. And I just loved him for his attitude and his trash talk. One time he was in the huddle at the end of the game. 1 play to go. They were down by 1. And the coach was drawing up this huge elaborate play. Eventually Larry Bird said, "Hey, coach, you want to win the game?" Coach said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, just give me the ball and get out of the way." So the whistle blows. They throw the ball into Larry Bird. Of course, he hits the game-winning shot. He just walks off the court. No big deal. And I just love stories like that. I just felt like I wanted to come in and just see what I could do. If you go and you put it out on the line and it doesn't go well, whatever. But he tried. So I was thinking about that. Larry Bird, one of my people I look up to, and I'm trying to find some confidence. And speaking of confidence here, you can see that I'm not very towards the front here. Coming into the weekend, I'd only ridden my bike outside twice all year, just riding on Zwift to gain the fitness. So just out of respect for my competitors, I'm staying back here, staying out of trouble, just taking it, a handful of laps just to get used to cornering and being around people. But at this point, after racing for 20 years, it comes back pretty quick. Not that I'm ever the best cornerer or the best bike handler, but I'm good enough to not crash the field out. So just trying to get my bearings in the first handful of laps here. And, having that misfortune in the time trial earlier and still getting 1st place, I wasn't worried about getting dropped. I knew I was strong in this field. Oh, this guy ahead with the Camelback. I love this guy. I was thinking, oh, who's that? Dave Zabriskie? That's actually more aerodynamic to have something fill up that space behind your helmet. Not legal, but I love it. I love this guy. All right, so I'm just starting to feel a little bit more confident here. We're a good 3 minutes in to the race. I'm going to start to move up here and there, 1 ride or 2 riders. each turn, each straightaway. And another reason why I'm not really too worried about being at the back is the first at the start of the race, everybody is fresh, and it's really hard to get away. It's only after the first handful of minutes where the lactic acid, the hydrogen ions can build up in people's legs, and you'll start to see fatigue. So usually nobody's going to go from the gun in a race like this. I mean, obviously it can happen, but I'm not too worried about it. So here we are. Probably 4 minutes in at this point. And there's a little bit of a gap there that's starting to open. So, we're coming up on that 5-minute mark. Lactic acid's probably building up in some legs. So you're just looking out for little gaps. If someone's opening up a gap now, they're going to open it up in the future too. And you're also looking out for body language too. Are people's hips rocking? Are their shoulders going side to side? Do they look like they're laboring, or do they look smooth? Do they look under control? As soon as you find somebody, looking like they're under pressure a little bit, then time to get around them. And you can kind of see off in the distance, there's like a group of two, another group of two. They got a little bit of a gap. So handful of minutes in, I can see some activity at the front. I'm going to try to move up. This was a slight uphill headwind section of the course, and check out what happens here. Everybody fans across the road. When that happens, I know that the front of this group is going to slow down, so I punch it. I put some power out, I get arrow, I get straight to the front of this group. By the time I hit the front of the group, they slowed down, and I accelerated. So I got a gap already. So that's one thing I look out for is a group. When the group fans across the road, I know the speed's going down at the front. If I keep the pressure on, I have that speed differential, and I'm going to get a gap pretty easily. I don't even have to sprint. Okay, so it just so happened that there were these 2 riders here, and then a group of 4 up the road. So that was good timing for that to happen. All right, so I pop on these guys. We got a gap. There's a group of 4 up the road. I'm not, my heart rate's 174. For a race of this duration, I could probably average that, 171, 172. And I'm not feeling too under pressure. So went to the front of the group, and I'm ready to put another effort out here, right in time for the slight uphill headwind. I know if I put in a big effort, I can close a good amount of the gap, and I think that's what's going to happen here. So 800 watts. I'm staying arrow. I'm not getting out of the saddle. I'm in an arrow position. So that 800 watts is a lot faster than if I were to get up and catch wind. And still into a headwind at this point. So this is the hard part of the course. I know if I put that power out, 700 watts again, this gap is going to come down. So pretty early on, probably 7 minutes in, I'm in a group of 5 off the front. When you do catch up to the breakaway, it's nobody up there should complain to you if you took a couple turns off, especially if you went. I didn't technically go solo. I had a little bit of a leapfrogging thing there, but those 2 riders actually are not on my wheel. I actually went past them, so I did most of the work by myself. And these riders in the breakaway here, if they see you coming solo, they're going to let you take a few turns off just to kind of catch your breath. So this rider ahead, 105, Michael Grant, I recognize him from winning the street sprint, and even before the weekend started, he was ranked very high, and he gets most of his results in Criterium. So I know that he's a sprinter, and I think at this point he was second place in GC. So if I'm in this breakaway and I have second place in GC who can out-sprint me, I got a decision to make here. I'm happy to be into a breakaway here because that's fewer people that I have to sprint against. Although my sprint is getting better, I'm still not in a point in the season where I've really been truly working on it on the bike. I've been in the gym, and I was really happy with how I sprinted. But I still didn't want this particular race to come down into a sprint. So, it's early, and it's not a bad thing to be out in front. But I'm just going to be careful at this point, like how much I'm actually working and contributing to the group. I'll work, but just got to be careful that you're towing a sprinter to the line. And I think he also notices that too. In his mind, he's got the winner of the time trial and leader of GC in this group. So he's not looking to do any pulling. He actually started to skip a couple turns, as he should. If I was him, I would have skipped some turns too. So that's why you have first and second in GC in this group, and I don't want to pull him, and he doesn't want to pull me. So eventually this gap does get brought back. The group does catch back up eventually. A little bit of a spoiler alert. So I think you'll see, so he didn't pull through. He's on my wheel right now. And I'll play the game. I'll play the game for sure. Sometimes if you want to win, you gotta risk losing. So if he didn't pull through and the group is about to catch us, I'll let those 3 riders go. And I'll let those 3 riders go and put a little bit of pressure on somebody else. And that's exactly what happened. This rider that's in front right here of this line that's closing down that gap is rider 117 on the green team. And I think he might have ended up second for the whole weekend, but at this point he's in third, and he had a stronger time trial than number 105. So this gap is going to be brought back. I could have easily just hopped on those 3 riders when they went away, but I let them go. Took a gamble just to see if I could get somebody else to burn a little bit of a match, and that's exactly what happened. Third place on GC, a really strong rider closed that gap. So it might not have made, that probably didn't make or break the situation here, but anytime that you can manipulate the race and get other people to do more work than you take it. And that's just one example there. So we just got caught. I'm feeling really good. 162 beats per minute, 1,000 watts. I'm going to get aero in this hard uphill headwind section and go again and see what happens. Why not? It's early. I know I can recover. And I'm going to see if I can form a breakaway this time without my GC rivals or a known sprinter. Okay, I'm still into a headwind, peaked at 700 watts there, 178 beats per minute. That's really cooking for me. 29 miles an hour. And that was into a headwind, so that's a good effort. And a little bit of a spoiler alert here. This was my winning move for the race. Nobody's on my wheel right now. I'm solo, and I'm going. So I like this situation. Coming into it after Friday. I'm already in the mindset that I'm behind because of a mistake, and I need to be more aggressive in my racing. Also from the time trial, I felt like even though I won, I wanted to see what I could do time-wise against the Pro 1-2-3 field, and I wasn't able to do that. So, I'm just throwing caution to this wind out there just to see what'll happen. So you probably noticed on that turn and in some of the other turns maybe coming up, I kind of took it from the inside. Usually you start outside, go inside, and finish outside. I took that on the inside because early on in a breakaway, it's very beneficial to get out of sight. Once you get out of sight, it's like a carrot to a donkey. If the field can't see you, then they're going to be less likely to chase as hard. And if you can get a big gap quickly, that also de-incentivizes counterattacks. If you're just dangling off the front by just a few seconds, then there are so many riders that can put one sprint in and close that gap. But if you can get it out to beyond one sprint effort, then people start to look around. They start to think twice about making that sprint, because if they can't sprint easily across, and and it's going to take a long time for them to get across. If they do that, then people are just going to be sitting on their wheel, and then they start to say, well, I'm not going to do the work to pull them back, somebody else will. So it's all about getting in your competitors' minds, and trying to put yourself into a position where they're going to be less likely to try to pull you back, or less willing to try to pull you back. So out of sight, out of mind, a big gap quickly. If you go by them in your initial attack at a crazy speed, then they're going to say, oh my God, that person is flying. I'm going to have to work so hard to accelerate to get up to speed. I hope somebody else does it. So the harder you make it for them right off the bat, the less likely that they're going to start to chase you. So at this point, I've been off the front for some minutes now, and I've gotten my gap, and I'm at a heart rate and an effort that I could start to go into the red zone and start to slow down. So earlier I had my heart rate at 170, upper 170s, I forget. I've kind of backed it down a little bit. I'm down at 169, 170 right now. So this is a heart rate that I could hold for an hour. So I'm kind of settling into this rhythm. And I'm, whenever you're off the front in a breakaway, you're really kind of at the mercy of the group behind. A lot of times it's not just brute force that allows you to get away. A lot of times it's the group makes a mistake, or the group is unmotivated, or something like that. So I got a long way to go. I know that it says 17.4 miles up at the top, but the finish is actually at like 15 miles. I had my fit file, my GPS running a little longer, but still I have almost 10 miles to go, and I'm by myself, so I got to make sure that I can hold this. So I'm going to try to find a rhythm that I can hold for a little bit, not go into the red zone, and just leave it up to fate. If they chase me down, that's fine. But if I go into the red zone, they're gonna catch me anyway. All right. So there's a balance here when you're solo like this, in how hard you're working, and efficiency, and kind of where you're working. So when I'm solo like this, what I want to do is try to find lines that I don't have to hit my brakes, and I can carry the most speed through the turns. So like I said before, I'm sure everyone watching this, maybe not, knows you want to start at the outside. So I'm all the way over to the right now. I'm going to take this turn and get pretty close to the corner here, and then I'm going to go all the way back out to the right here, and then the same thing, starting right, going left, going all the way over to the right. So when you take turns like that, you're going to make the actual turning part be as the least sharp as possible. So you're making it more of a gradual bend in your line than a turn, and that's going to allow you to carry more speed. That's going to allow you to not hit your brakes, which are two good things when you're trying to go off the front, especially by yourself. More speed, less braking means that it's going to be more of your effort's going to go into speed rather than slowing down. Another thing I'm looking out for, obviously, is incline. Check the incline in the upper right here. It's going up to 2-3% maximum. This is also a headwind in this section. And even though we turned left, and in theory it should be a crosswind here, it still felt like a headwind because it's a big building on the left. The wind probably hits that building and then pushes it straight into you. Then you turn this turn, and it's a headwind again. I always look out for flags on the course. On this section in the upper left, there are flags. Wind wasn't too much that lap, but most of the time it's straight into your head, right straight into your face. Maybe a little bit from the right, so a little kind of cross headwind. So basically, from now here, there's a little bit of a tailwind, and there's no incline. So you can I found, this part here was easier. This hits you a headwind. Again, I think it bounced off that building and came over to you. Taking a right-hand turn here, we got a slight downhill, we got a tailwind, so this is the easiest part. Many laps here I would get down into the hundreds for my watts. Sometimes I'd soft pedal. Left-hand turn here, you'd have to be careful each lap because it'd be a crosswind from your left, and boy, that would really get that front wheel turning. And then here we are back to the slight uphill into the headwind. So I found the harder parts of the course. So at this point, with the headwind, I'm as aero as possible. And with the uphill nature, as well as the headwind, I'm putting the power out. Every lap, at least 500 something watts there. And then every lap, another surge here on this slight uphill headwind. There we go, 600 something watts there. And if I needed to recover, it was in the finishing straightaway, and for sure on the downhill section. So I'm finding my lines. I'm watching out for cracks in the road, bumps in the road. I don't want to get my tire stuck in anywhere and get a flat tire. That's going to ruin this solo breakaway. So I got my lines that are going to keep my tubes. I don't have tubeless. I never flat. I get lucky, but I'm not going to get a flat tire here. Got my fast lines that I don't have to break in. Sections of the course like this where I can go down to 0 watts if I want to, if I need to, for a little micro break. And sections of the course that are harder where I got to put the power out. Right. And there's a man that I met after the race. He said, "Oh my God, were you in the Masters race earlier?" And I said, "Yeah, that was me." And he said, "I was timing your laps and they were within a second every lap." And I saw that on Strava too afterwards. My laps were very consistent, except until the last few where I kind of slowed down just to take less risk. But that's one thing to think about too. I've been off the front for a good amount of time. Still got a good amount of time to go. Where does your mind go? Anywhere that you need to go in a positive direction, I think is important. And any way that you can get there is a good way to get there. So for me, everything that I was just talking about, focusing on the lines, the cracks, the most efficient line in the turn, trying not to break, getting aero, all these things, every single lap, kept my focus. And instead of thinking about, oh my God, my heart rate's 174, oh my God, this hurts so much, or ooh, this is so uncomfortable to shrug my shoulders, I don't think about that. I think about speed. I think about Larry Bird, 33. All right, now at this point, my gap is starting to grow. I must be around 30 seconds or so. 30 seconds. 167 beats per minute. So if I need to, at this pace right now, this is a good cruising pace. If I needed to, I could go a little bit faster. There's the group right there. So you can see the map on the upper left here. It's kind of like the number 8. Every half of a lap, the course kind of comes together, and I can see the group and they can see me. So at this point, moving forward, my gap is like 40 seconds. I think it maxed out. They said at like 45. So I know when I see that group in the well, I guess it's at the middle of the course, but every half of a lap, when I see that group, I can gauge really well if they gained on me or I gained on them every half of a lap based on where that peloton is. So they're about halfway around that bend at this point. So I definitely could go a little bit harder if I needed to at this point, but then I risk going into the red zone and slowing down. So I've been watching the Tour of France for a long time, and I've only seen this tactic played out one time. But it was genius to me, and I'll never forget it. So again, they're about halfway through this turn, so they didn't gain anything on that half. So I'm always watching that. But one time, I even forget what year it was, who was in the group, but at the beginning of a stage in the Tour of France, you never really see it on TV, but for the first hour, it's all out. It's full gas. People sprinting as hard as they possibly can, trying to form a breakaway. And it looks exhausting. Like the speed and the effort to get the breakaway of the day established is really crazy. And the reason why it eventually gets away is because all the teams are happy with the composition of the group. If it's a flat sprint day, then the people in the breakaway aren't GC threats, so the GC teams are happy to let it go. And also the size of the group, if it's not a very big group, the sprinter teams are happy to let it go, because a bigger group would be harder to pull back. A smaller one, they can pull back by the end of the race. So it takes a lot of effort for that breakaway to get away. But once they do, the peloton allows it to go. And then they have calculations. I think it's like a minute per 10 kilometers. So with a certain, I forget exactly what it is, but the teams know exactly how many minutes to allow the breakaway to get up the road. And the teams love that the breakaway is up the road, because once a group of 5 is up the road and they have 3 minutes, it's really pointless for anybody in the group to attack and try to bridge that 3-minute gap on 5 riders all by themselves. So allowing a breakaway to go and to get a gap keeps the group under control, and it's a more even effort. So long story, getting to this point. In this particular Tour of France stage, the breakaway got up the road, and instead of the breakaway going all out and trying to get the biggest gap that they possibly could, they got out to the gap that the peloton allowed them to get, and then they just they didn't soft pedal, but they didn't ride hard at all. And what happened was the peloton started to catch the breakaway too early with like 50 kilometers to go. The peloton doesn't want to catch the breakaway with 50 kilometers to go, because then it just turns into an attack fest for 50 Ks to the finish line. So when the breakaway slowed down, so did the peloton, and the peloton allowed that gap to stay. And then as the finish came more near, the peloton would speed up to try to catch the breakaway, but the breakaway, because they were not riding hard and they had energy left, could ride hard as well. So as the peloton gained speed as the end of the race neared, so did the breakaway. So they stayed away using this tactic. And I'm kind of thinking the same thing here. It's very unlikely that I'm going to gain another 45 seconds on the field at this point and lap them. That would be one option, though, to get into the group and then be in the breakaway. So how can I feather my effort to make sure I stay away? 45-second gap is a serious gap in a race like this, especially with probably about 4 miles to go here. But even before that, 45 seconds is a pretty good gap. So because I can see them in every half of a lap, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to match their effort. And if they gain a couple seconds on me, then I'm going to put in a harder half of a lap and try to get that couple seconds back. If I gain 2 seconds on them, then I'm just going to keep on settling in. That way, at this point, with the way it's going, I don't have to go into the red zone and risk going too hard and slowing down. I'm going to make them catch me, rather than me thinking that I have to go crazy to try to stay ahead of them. The pit is now closed. I can hear the audio here as I'm narrating. The pit is now closed. There's just I think there's 7 laps at this point. Okay, so here we are in the middle part of the course. Oh boy, look at this gap. See, they're not even to the turn yet. They're not even to the turn. So I feel like, once you get into this point, like the adrenaline can take over and you could oh, there's my friend Anki. I just yelled yo to my friend Anki on the side of the road. So I feel like, it really is beneficial to kind of calm the nerves in a situation like this. And it's not about getting the biggest gap you possibly can, even if you can, because it might risk going into the red zone. So there they are again. They might have made like a second up in that section there, but staying stable. And certainly by this point, I'm starting to do the math in my head. If there's a few miles to go, that's probably 5-6 laps. If I was averaging about 25 miles an hour, 25 something. If they're, say, I'm wondering how fast can they go? If they're not catching me at this point, then it's very unlikely that they're going to even get close to 30 miles an hour. But in my head, I was just thinking 30 miles an hour. If I'm doing 25 and they're doing 30, just rough math, that's going to be about 15 seconds of gain per lap. And if I got 5 laps to go, with 3 to go, there's no way that they're going to catch me. So I'm also thinking about that, for confidence at this point to kind of rally and keep the effort going. So the closer I get to the finish line with this gap, they can't go fast enough to catch me. The longer I stay away, the more doubt will come up into their head. They're going to start to think, oh boy, we haven't caught him by now. And then they start to think about the sprint finish, the lead out, kind of getting organized together rather than catching me. So that just makes it easier for me. Oh, another thing that I also thought about during the race, pretty early on in this attack, was I may have been lucky with my time trial earlier with my mechanical getting there 15 seconds from the start, because I know I could have done a faster time. And I got lucky because I still got first place, but it wasn't by a very big margin. If I had gone there with a really good warm-up and 100% ready to go, maybe my time would have been a lot faster and the peloton would have been a little bit more weary to give me this gap. So I was thinking about that in the back of my mind too. Maybe they would underestimate what I could do if they just went by my time trial time and they didn't know of the bad luck that I had. And there can't be too many more laps, maybe a few laps to go, 2, 3 at this point. So like I said, 45-second gap. They're not going to make 15 seconds up on me per lap. The only thing that can stop me now would be a flat tire. So all along the way, I'm watching out for these cracks in the road and the bumps, things like that. But extra vigilant here. And also, making sure that I got a good grip on the bars, because those gusts of wind, especially down here at the bottom of the course, after this next left-hand turn, really could take that front wheel out. Well, every once in a while, I really try to make it over to the right of the road here. The wind a lot of times was a crosswind from the right, so cross headwind here on this straightaway section and then the next straightaway section. So I try to get over as close as I could to the right. And if it is a true credit cross headwind, we can check the flags here. You'll see them in the upper left. Actually, it looks at this point it's coming from the left. That's the crazy part about this weekend. Like the wind was really kind of unpredictable. With the gusts, you could have the wind coming from a certain direction 9 out of 10 times, but that 1 out of 10 time it just came the other way and caught you by surprise. But if you got a cross headwind coming from the right and you move all the way over to the right, then you could get a little bit more of a break from the wind if there's a mailbox or a big orange cone or a big tree or something like that. The closer that you are to that, the more benefit you'll have. And every little thing adds up when it comes to speed. Because remember, it's not the person that puts out the most power in a race. It's always the person that puts a higher average speed out. So on this section here, I could get out of the saddle and put a lot more power down, but I probably wouldn't go as fast as having my hands on the hoods, forearms parallel, shoulders up towards my ears. I notice in the mirror when my shoulders come up towards my ears, they get more narrow. My head down in line with my body, so my body is drafting my head. It's all about, for me, aerodynamics. So yeah, I could probably pull more power out. Maybe my back would feel a little bit better in a long race, but it's not going to be as fast or as efficient. I'd have to put out more power for the same speed, and more power than this wouldn't be sustainable. Much more power. And I'm getting the bell lap here. Bell lap here, yeah. So they're actually, they're well around that turn at that point. But of course they're doing a lead out. They're going to gain time on me. But there's no need to panic. Again, because you do that calculation in your mind. If they go 5 miles an hour faster, if I got 40 seconds right now, they're going to get to 25 seconds. So keeping calm and not panicking and kind of logically thinking it through can really keep your heart rate down, allow you to breathe deeper, and just staying calm and collected goes a long way. So, coming up on just the last couple of turns. So that's how I kind of came into this race, with my mindset of how the races went earlier, last night and earlier in the day. I was a little let down from that mistake by the officials. It happens. And I was a little disappointed to not be able to have a time that I could compare against the 1, 2, 3 field for the time trial. So, how do you harness those emotions? You could get let down and be like, oh boy, here goes another race. What's going to happen this time? Or you can say, this one's going to go right. This isn't going to be strike 3. I'm going to go out there and have a great race. And with that intention, and you're never in control of the outcome. You're just in control of your choices in the moment, and your intention. And then also kind of thinking about how the weekend has gone so far for the others too, and what they might be thinking, specifically about that time trial time. I knew I could have gone faster, but I didn't. And maybe in their head they didn't see anybody who was capable of soloing away. So kind of gaining confidence from that, at least to try. Yeah, that's the fun part, is the mindset, the psychological part. What are you thinking? How can you mold, feelings and emotions into, positive action? What are your competitors thinking? What are your competitors feeling? How are they going to race? Just putting yourself in a position, or trying to mold the race in a way where other people use energy, like that green rider at the beginning, 117, having to close that gap that I could have copped on, but I didn't. Little things like that add up, and over 20 seasons, little things like that turn into kind of big things. And there's a cool down lap, and right on time, there's my friend Anki that I yelled to earlier in the race.